For the first time in its history, the United Nations welcomed a pope for the opening of the General Assembly. Speaking to world leaders gathered at UN headquarters in New York, Pope Francis touched on a variety of global issues and cautioned that the situation in conflict-torn regions of the globe was grave.
No solo en los casos de persecución religiosa o cultural, sino en cada situación de conflicto, como Ucrania, Siria, Irak, Libia, Sudán del Sur, en la región de los Grandes Lagos, hay rostros concretos antes que intereses de parte, por legítimos que sean.
The pontiff also spoke about the importance of the new Sustainable Development Agenda that governments adopted, calling it an important sign of hope.
La medida y el indicador más simple y adecuado del cumplimiento de la nueva agenda para el desarrollo será el acceso efectivo, práctico e inmediato para todos a los bienes materiales y espirituales indispensables.
During his visit, the Pope also addressed UN staff members, blessing them as well as asking them to pray for him. All eyes were on the UN as world leaders adopted the Sustainable Development Goals, or SDGs, a bold new global agenda to end extreme poverty, fight inequality, and tackle climate change.
The agenda you are adopting today advances the goals of the Charter. It embodies the aspirations of people everywhere for lives of peace, security, and dignity on a healthy planet.
The adoption of the goals was preceded by a performance by UNICEF Goodwill Ambassador Shakira, who sang Imagine by John Lennon.
Imagine there's no countries. It isn't hard to do.
Meanwhile, fellow UNICEF Goodwill Ambassador Angelique Kidjo performed a moving version of Africa, her hymn to the continent she calls home. Speaking alongside 193 youth representatives, one for each UN member state, Pakistani education advocate Malala Yousafzai asked world leaders to promise that every child will have the right to safe, free, and quality primary and secondary education.
Promise an education to my brave sister Salam and all refugee children, that wars cannot stop them from learning. Promise my sister Amina that our sisters abducted by Boko Haram will be brought back, that girls will be able to study in safety.
May I take it that the Assembly wishes to adopt draft resolution A/70/L1. It is so decided.
The adoption of the goals kicked off a three-day summit that features more than 150 world leaders. United Nations officials welcomed measures announced by the European Union to address the situation of refugees and migrants who are arriving to the continent. This includes the decision to increase resources for humanitarian aid to countries neighboring war-ravaged Syria, as well as to relocate an additional 120,000 people within Europe over the next 2 years. The UN Refugee Agency, or UNHCR, said the announcement is an important step towards stabilizing the crisis, but much more needs to be done.
Antonio Guterres, the head of the agency, said that relocation plan will not put an end to the problem, but it will hopefully be the beginning of a solution.
UNHCR continues to advocate for the creation of more legal pathways for refugees to reach safety in Europe, robust reception facilities for new arrivals, and mechanisms for the dignified return of those who do not need international protection. Also welcoming the EU decisions, the UN Children's Fund UNICEF urged greater efforts to care for and support child refugees and migrants, most of whom have experienced terrifying journeys and are exhausted and frightened. UNICEF Goodwill Ambassador Novak Djokovic recently met with some of the refugee and migrant children who are passing through Serbia on their way to Western Europe.
Seeing children that don't know if, they will have the roof above their head, if they will have the food on their table, if they have their water to drink. They don't know where they're going, where they're heading, what tomorrow brings. It's hurting me very much personally.
Children make up 1 in every 4 asylum seekers in Europe this year.